Several tenants of 7500 Southshore Drive stood outside the building demanding change.
It is bad we being treated like this.
I have never been through nothing like this in my life.
How are they going to move?
Whatever help may be on the way, these tenants are expected to be moving as the temperatures are dropping and as we move deeper into winter.
America, the mainstream media is trying to spin a heartbreaking story about poor tenants being evicted from a Southshore apartment building because of Trump's ICE raids. But here's what they're not telling you. These residents have been living in a foreclosed building that's been falling apart for years, infested with TDA gang members, and now they're demanding the city of Chicago bail them out with taxpayer money. The building at 7500 Southshore Drive was purchased by an out-of-state investment group, went into foreclosure when they didn't make payments, and Wells Fargo had to step in and secure the asset. But instead of taking responsibility and finding new housing through their Section 8 case managers, these tenants are playing the victim card and demanding $7,500 each for relocation.
The Southshore apartment building that was raided by ICE say they are now being evicted.
What is up, guys? Tyson DELACRUZ here. Thank you so much for rocking with me. This story perfectly shows how the left-wing media creates false narratives to attack Trump's immigration policies while ignoring the real issues of failed property management and tenant responsibility. Let me break down the real timeline of what happened to 7500 Southshore Drive, because the leftist lamestream media deliberately is misleading you about the cause and effect here.
This has nothing to do with the ICE situation. This building has been deteriorating for over the past year.
Even the tenants themselves admit this has nothing to do with the ICE situation. The building has been deteriorating for years, but somehow, the media keeps framing this as
Trump's immigration enforcement caused all these people to lose their housing.
They say it was also a surprise to see an eviction notice posted in the building the day before Thanksgiving.
It is bad we being treated like this. And we did nothing wrong. We don't deserve this. That ain't right. That ain't right.
the judge appointed a receiver for the building because financial problems with the owner, not because of any ICE raid. This is a standard foreclosure process that happens when property owners can't make their loan payments to the bank. The building was purchased by Trinity Flood, an out-of-state investor from Wisconsin who clearly had no idea what they were getting into when they purchased this property on Southshore. They took a $27 million loan backed by Wells Fargo, couldn't make payments, and now the bank foreclosed to recover their investment. This is basic real estate economics. If you can't pay your mortgage, the bank takes the property away. It's absolutely nothing to do with immigration enforcement. Now, let me tell you about the real reason this building has been falling apart. It's been infested by gang activity for years, specifically Tren de Aragua gang members who have been using this property for criminal operations. The building has been known as a problem property with Chicago PD long before ICE raids happened. We're talking about drug dealings, weapons trafficking, violent crime that made this building uninhabitable for law-abiding residents.
Days after ICE agents conducted a late-night military-style raid on a Southshore apartment building, congressional lawmakers offered the press a tour inside. On the same day, Governor J.B. Pritzker told a national audience that the search for a few criminals quickly turned into a siege.
They were going after a few gang members, and instead they broke windows, they broke down doors, they ransacked the place.
When federal agents conducted that raid back in September, they weren't targeting random immigrants. They were going after gang members and criminals who've been terrorizing the building for years. The raid was a result of criminal activity, not the case of the building's problems. But instead of acknowledging gang activity, weapons trafficking, and drugs destroying their living conditions, these tenants are now trying to blame Trump's immigration policies for their situation. It's a complete reversal of cause and effect designed to generate sympathy and taxpayer-funded assistance. The truth is, if these tenants had been working with law enforcement to get gang members out of their building years ago, they might still have a habitable place to live. Instead, they tolerated criminal activity until it attracted federal attention. Let's talk about what actually happened with this foreclosure, because this is a perfect example of how irresponsible property investments affect everyone involved. Trinity Flood brought this property portfolio for $20 million in 2020, taking on a $27 million loan from Wells Fargo. Apparently, she was an out-of-state investor who had no experience managing properties in high-crime Chicago neighborhoods.
They say a judge granted an emergency motion from Wells Fargo that was supported by the city of Chicago, saying that all tenants need to vacate by December 12th.
This wasn't some heartless bank trying to hurt poor people. This was a lender trying to protect their asset and secure a property that has become a public safety hazard. The city of Chicago supported Wells Fargo's motion because they understand that this building is no longer habitable. When you have broken elevators, no heat, no electricity, standing water, and sewage problems, that is not a place where people should be living. But instead of accepting the reality and working with their Section 8 case manager to find new housing, these tenants formed a union. They formed a union, you guys, to demand $7,500 each from taxpayers to relocate. They want the city to pay for them to leave the building they should have left months ago when the conditions became uninhabitable. Here's some free advice from me to those tenants that the media won't give you. If you're on Section 8 housing assistance, you have options. You don't need to sit in a foreclosed building demanding taxpayer handouts.
We need help in this building. It's not just me, it's a group of us. There's still a lot of us that's left in this building.
Every Section 8 recipient has a case manager whose job is to help them find suitable housing when their current situation becomes untenable. Instead of forming tenant unions and demanding money from the city and more handouts that they've been used to their entire life, these residents should be working with their case manager to transfer their vouchers to habitable properties.
In addition to sending a letter of demand to the receiver appointed to the building, the tenants union tells us they've also sent letters to the mayor and governor's offices to see if they can lend any help.
They are demanding $7,500 each to relocate in the same neighborhood, but that's not how Section 8 works. Your housing voucher is portable. You can use it anywhere in the city or even transfer it to another municipality, but you're so used to the drug activity and maybe you're getting drugs in this neighborhood, so you don't want to leave. You don't need a cash payout to move. The fact that they're specifically demanding to stay in the same neighborhood suggests they're more interested in getting paid than actually solving their housing problem. If your priority was safety, habitable housing, you'd take your voucher and move to a better area immediately. Now let me describe the actual conditions these tenants are living in, because this will help you understand why the building needs to be vacated immediately.
There is still no heat, no electricity, no elevator, and no help finding other places to live. Someone shared photos inside the building last week.
I have never been through nothing like this in my life.
No heat, no electricity, no working elevator, and according to reports, sewage backups into the units and standing water throughout the building. These are third world living conditions that no one should tolerate, regardless of their housing situation.
They have not fixed the lights in the hallway. It is dark. It is very dark in the building. It's scary, it's dangerous.
Ceilings caving in, structural damage, and the building being destroyed from the inside and out. This isn't a housing crisis. This is a public safety emergency. These people are risking their lives to stay in a building that should have been condemned months ago. But instead of prioritizing their safety, their children's safety, they're staying in these dangerous conditions because they think they can leverage the situation into taxpayer-funded payouts. This city has every right to order an emergency evacuation when the building becomes this dangerous. This isn't about punishing tenants. This is about preventing deaths from building collapse, fires, or carbon monoxide poisoning. Now let's talk about the lamestream media spinning this story, because it's a perfect example of how they create false narratives to attack Trump's policies.
I got a gun put in my face and everything. And me personally, I don't appreciate that at all.
Democrat lawmakers are giving press tours and blaming ICE agents for ransacking the place. But these conditions existed long before federal raids. Broken elevators, sewage problems, drugs and weapon trafficking, and structural damage weren't caused by one night of law enforcement operations. The media is deliberately connecting the foreclosure and evictions to ICE raids to create sympathy for tenants and criticize Trump's immigration policies. But the the timeline doesn't support their narrative. The building was already in foreclosure proceedings before the raids even happened. This is classic left-wing media manipulation. Take a complex situation involving property, investments, gang activity, municipal housing policies, then blame everything on Trump immigration enforcement to generate outrage and clicks. The real story here is about failed property management, irresponsible lending, and tenants who tolerate criminal activity until it destroyed their living situation. But that doesn't fit Trump is mean to immigrants narrative that they want to push. This situation perfectly illustrates everything wrong with Chicago's leadership and their approach to housing policies. Instead of addressing gang activity that made this building uninhabitable, city officials ignored the problem until federal agents had to step in. Our good friend Brandon Mohawk Johnson is promising to work overtime to help these tenants. But where is this urgency when the building was being destroyed by gang activity? Where was the city's concern when elevators were breaking down and sewage was backing up into units? The city supported Wells Fargo emergency motion to vacate the building because they know it's uninhabitable. But now they're also promising to help tenants to stay in the same neighborhood. You cannot have it both ways. Either the building is too dangerous for human habitation or it's not. This is what happens when you have leadership more concerned with political optics than public safety. They let problems fester until they become emergencies, then blame federal authorities when they're forced to take action. America, the Southshore apartment situation is not a story about ICE raids destroying people's lives. It's a story about failed property investment, gang activity, and tenants who are now playing the victim card instead of taking responsibility for their housing situation. These residents have been living in uninhabitable conditions for months, tolerating criminal activity that made their building a target for federal law enforcement. Now, the building is in foreclosure and they're being forced to move. They want taxpayers to pay them $7,500 each to relocate. But to my victim tenants, that is not how Section 8 housing assistance works. You have a voucher, you have options. You can work with your case manager to find safe, habitable housing anywhere in the city. You don't need a special payout to exercise your existing housing rights. The lamestream media is using this story to attack Trump's immigration policies, but the timeline doesn't support their narrative. The building was already failing before any ICE raids happened. The foreclosure was already in process before federal agents arrived. What we're seeing is a perfect example of how Democrats create dependency instead of solutions. Instead of encouraging these residents to use their existing resources to find better housing, they're promising government bailouts and encouraging victim mentality. The real victims here are the taxpayers who are being asked to fund relocation payments for people who already have housing assistance, and the law-abiding residents who had to live with gang activity because city officials refused to address the problem. Let me know what you guys think about this. Drop it down in the comments section down below. Smash the like button if you kindly would. Share, subscribe, and as always, guys, I'll catch you on the next one.